At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Finance Personnel Committee. This is April 9th, 2024. Amy, roll please.
Alderperson Pere.
Here.
Alderperson Gantz.
Here.
Mayor Boyd.
I'm here.
Alderperson Sendinger. Here. Alderperson Quigley.
Here.
All right, all here. Item 2, approval of the minutes from March 12th, 2024, regular meeting of the Finance Personnel Committee.
Make a motion to approve. I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Pere, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Any comment or discussion on the minutes from the March 12th meeting? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Anyone in person or virtually have any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? If so, state your name. Seeing there's no one in person, virtually for the second time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? If so, just state your name. For the third and final time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda, just state your name. Item 4, Fire Department overtime and LifeQuest billing reports for March 2024. I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. Any discussion or comments on the Fire Department overtime? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, consideration and possible action on the March 2024 police overtime report.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
We waited. Motion by Alderperson Cuniger, seconded by Alderperson Pere, but very close though. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, consideration and request to accept a $38,101 grant from Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation for the purchase of 17 defibrillators, AEDs.
I'll move to approve.
I will second. Motion by Alderperson Cuniger, seconded by me. Any discussion or comments? And I see in here, Chief, I know you're out there someplace, that Sergeant Vandenbush submitted this for the first time and was very successful. Is that correct?
Yes, this is his first ever grant application.
Wow, we should hire him to do this more often, then, right? Pass on congratulations.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, pass on congratulations and thanks for doing that, okay, Chief?
We'll definitely pass that along.
Other questions or comments? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, consideration and request to allow overhire for a police officer for 2024 and for subsequent years as needed. Who wants to talk about this? Should we go to Chief?
Yeah.
Jeremy, you're up.
Yes, so as you know, the council last year approved our ability to add a little extra money into the budget to allow for an overhire because of the amount of time it takes to go from finding out that we're going to need an officer when we first are notified of that vacancy until the time that we're able to go through a hiring process and then actually train that officer coming in to go through the field training program to be certifiable for solo patrol. That time period that elapses is usually anywhere between 8 and 9 months. And obviously, we don't always get 8 to 9 months of notice that we're going to be losing an employee, whether it's through retirement or leaving for another position within law enforcement or, similar things as that. So what we're basically asking for is the ability to go ahead and use that overhire here in 2024. We are currently one position short of our 38 authorized normal strength, and that came about because Jake Nowak was promoted to captain. So because he was promoted from within, we have that existing vacancy. We also have a couple of other people in the pipeline, one of whom is one of our CSOs that we would be looking to hire hopefully this year as well in anticipation of our next vacancy, hoping to get ahead of that 9-month curve a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to have a couple others comment before you guys start making comments as well. So, Pam, I think we'll have you make a comment. We'll go with you first, and then Shannon will go with you second, okay? So, you're on deck, Shannon. Be prepared.
I didn't have a question this time.
No, that would. Yeah, I'm going Pam Manley. She's in here, so I'm going to go the other Pam.
The other Pam. Okay,
Pam.
sorry.
You'll be Pamela. Larry?
Real quick before Pam starts, just I'd asked her to comment to you on things about levy limits, expenditure restraint, those types of things as part of the impact, whether she had information or not, and that's all I'm saying. Go ahead.
Okay.
I talked to Larry a little bit about, I have some concerns about adding positions during a year, because that's fine. Using from unassigned reserves is something we can do. But in this instance, we're looking to do it for continual as well, which to me is really just adding a position to our budget. So if we're looking to add a position to our budget, we have to figure out what are we going to be doing for 2025 budget. And here we are in the middle of 24, and you're already assigning funds for 25's budget. So you're kind of handcuffing us a little bit for the next budget. So I took a look just to see, where my numbers were compared to what their memo said. And for police, I'm right about on $110,000 for another position for if we had it for a full year. So as far as levy limits go, we're going to be stuck with what the state has for levy limits. We don't have the luxury of having the additional funding from the shared revenue that we had last year. Well, we do. We keep getting it now, but we've kind of built our budget off of having that now. There's not a lot of one-time things that we built into the 24 budget that we're going to be able to say, it's okay, we don't have that for the 25 budget. So I just wanted to caution you guys on, committing too much for future budgets when it's not budget time yet. So I can talk about the fireworks.
So maybe the subsequent years you're not comfortable with?
That's
and
the part
maybe
I'm not-
strike that from it and then just kind of treat this separately as a
If
one-off?
you're truly looking for a specific instance, somebody's going to be retiring, you want to be able to hire somebody now so that in 9 months when that person retires, I know we don't always have the luxury of knowing 9 months ahead of time somebody's leaving, but if we do, it's
Well-
nice to be able to, not everybody can be Larry, yes.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah. We don't need an overhire for that one.
Ask
That's,
him.
9 months was nice, that is a
that's
luxury.
an underhire.
But just to be able to, plan and make these sort of decisions during the budget process is what my recommendation
Sure.
would be. If you're looking to do it continually.
Sure. I think what we'll probably do is, because Shannon will offer a different perspective on this whole process, anyone have any questions of Pam regarding that? Everyone okay with that explanation?
Okay.
So-
I'll add
Larry?
Just to add in though, and to clarify, and I'd ask Pam just real quick to look at it and give me some comments or give the group a comment in case it came up as an issue, and also so council would be aware of it. If you do approve the position, and fire is going to be asking as well, I'm assuming we'll be able to make it work for levy limits for 2025.
We'll find a way.
Yeah, I mean, it'll work. I mean,
Will you?
But it does
Have to.
limit other areas that you could potentially do things that you may want to do. So it's not as though you're just going to hit the wall because of these and not be able to do anything, just so you understand that. But I did want to make you aware, and Pam wanted to make you aware that there is an impact to what we're able to do when we do add positions along the way, mid-year. Just so
Very
everybody's
good.
aware of it.
Very good. Okay, thanks. And you may have more to add as well, too. Shannon, do you have anything to add on this from the human resource perspective?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So certainly from a budgetary standpoint, I mean, it doesn't work very nice and clean, right? Where we, certainly it's risky by estimating when you think you're going to have your next resignation or retirement for a position. But, just in terms of, what is the likelihood, and we can only make a best prediction of what kind of is going to happen in the future based on past years. So looking back at the last 14 years since I've been here, I can speak to it. We have been fully staffed in the police department on 2 occasions, and both of those occasions was very short-lived. And just to explain a little bit, you don't have a extremely lacking HR department that isn't helpful and doesn't move a process. To explain a little bit of the background with the police hiring process is, the process is super comprehensive. I know we have streamlined the process significantly over the years, and have shortened the process probably as much as we're able to. We're still running a good process, or candidates through a good process. Now, that being said, when the chief mentions 8 or 9 months, he's taking into consideration that is from the time that essentially, and we do continuous advertising, but that is from the time where we, look at kind of who's in our applicant pool, and the time where somebody can truly start working, count for staffing. There is a 4-month field training process through all new hires start 4 months prior to that. So really, they're starting at about 5-month mark, but then we have to get them hired, and then they have to go through 16 weeks, so 4 months of training before they can really count towards staffing. So the process is extremely, extremely long for somebody to be hired in the police department. The background process is lengthy, which, you don't want to cut corners there. And like I said, we've tried to streamline the process as much as possible, but that is what it is. Now, looking back over the period of time, we certainly try to always, move a process as quickly as we can, as soon as we know somebody is going to be vacated. But for various reasons, we'll get a position filled, and then it seems like somebody goes on FMLA, and then we lose, a couple of people for the department. We have another retirement we're not anticipating. Apparently, and I can't confirm whether or not this is accurate, but according to one of the other police officers in the department, he said in 20 years he's only been aware of that we've been fully staffed these 2 occasions. So I can't confirm that because I can't speak to that. But when you look at it from that perspective, yes, there's a risk of if we go ahead and overhire and we don't have somebody give notice for an extended period of time, we run the risk of going over budget. I do think it's highly unlikely that would happen. Certainly for an entire year, it's very unlikely. Just looking at a number of things, the age of our current workforce, we know we're going to see a big group of people retiring within the next couple of years. We kind of went through a big retirement cycle, and we're, okay for a couple of years. We didn't have that many, and now we're kind of at that next surge. So I think this overhire is well thought out. I think we're asking for it at an appropriate time just to try to prepare for this big surge of candidates or for people that are looking at retiring. And that being said, if Finance and Council would give the authority that we would have the overhire, doesn't mean that we're going to automatically fill the position right away. We'll look at a number of different things, and certainly we could put whatever parameters that the council would feel comfortable with, but we would certainly try to be certainly fiscally responsible and not just jump to fill a position just because we have that ability. We would certainly make a very educated decision with the timing of the candidates and who we'd be bringing in. So anyways, I'm sure I have more things to add, but certainly can answer any other questions anybody has.
Thank you. More things to add? Thank you for that. I think you made yourself very clear as well, too. So it sounds like she's okay with it from the HR perspective. It takes a long time to hire somebody. So that's kind of what I'm getting out of this. Questions or comments now that you've heard from both and Larry? Alderperson Conacher.
My question revolves around, we are always talking about both fire and police regarding budgeting process. We're always catching up. The budgeting process that we have doesn't seem to fit the model of the hiring that we have in these 2 areas. How can we adjust our budgeting process such that we're setting aside funds in a way to allocate to overtime or plan ahead for the hire such that funds have more flexibility to cover? Because either way, we're paying for it, right? We're paying for it with additional overtime or an early hire. We have to account for the cash somewhere. Why not just have it built in within the budget process to allow us that greater flexibility?
I'll give this to Larry, and if not, I'll answer as well.
I was looking at the way you're structured right now for your budget, that would be the unassigned reserves.
Right.
So if there's a reason, we used to do contingencies, we used to build in extra money in different accounts a long time ago for different things like you're describing.
Yep.
And it created, the best way to describe it over time is fluff in the budget. And so we're typically 99% or so accurate on our numbers for everything through the year where we end up. So we're very tight on those. And the way we accomplish that is by not building in contingencies, not building in that type of stuff, but instead you're budgeting for what you expect and know you'll get as best you can estimate for expenditures and revenues. And if something unexpected comes up where you need to fill a position, do an overhire, whatever, you've always used, at least in the last 10 years, unassigned reserves to fill that gap. That way we don't kind of lose track of things over time in the budget by adding things in that you may never use because they tend to never go away, type of thing. So I get what you're saying, but if you don't want to use unassigned reserves, you could add in extra money and you may use it, you may not, but I got a feeling that'll get out of whack over time. And I would recommend just using unassigned reserves. That's what it's there for. That was the intent. Even the auditors preferred us to do it that way. It's cleaner for a process.
Well, and I know we have the allowances to do it comfortably, if you will, within unassigned reserves. It just seems like we're always catching up to these two departments specifically. And if we could do something more proactively that doesn't put like a juggernaut in the system, it just seems like there's a way that we could plan.
So maybe you're also saying as well, too, as part of the budget process and the executive budget that we present in the draft, anticipate or do a better job going forward, which we try to. I know we added how many positions last year? 6?
Yeah, I don't know how you could do it differently because you're not going to know if somebody tells you you're going to resign or not resign. So that you're not going to be able to do a better job on that per se,
Okay.
unless they tell you where you're. And HR right now looks ahead and tries to see how old people are in general, what their retirement age is, and guesses.
And that's what
they
we
talk
have
to
in here.
department
Yeah.
heads and things and try to get a feel for what could happen in the coming year. The other part, there is one account line item in the budget under other general government or other government, I can't remember what the title of that program was, that we used to have, for example, with the contracts for police and fire where they weren't settled yet. We built money into those every year that we think would be an approximation of what our cost would be if we ever get the contract settled, that we have to settle out. If you wanted to add something in that was ambiguous in that context, that you just don't want to do a budget amendment for, and you just want to have it in that account, that would be the place to put it for the extra funding.
Yeah, so I guess I look to you, like if there's a recommendation to plan a little bit differently within the parameters of our system.
I like Larry's idea. I mean, of being able to, I like contingencies. We had it in Green Bay, and I got very familiar with that process. It didn't mean you had to spend it by any means, but it wasn't designated to a specific department, so that department felt like they had the extra funding there so they could spend it. You know, it had to be assigned by the finance committee to that department. So I like being able to have something like that with the other general government fund, to be able to have the funds there available. Otherwise, you look at the fact that you know that PD is never fully staffed. Do we just budget for another position to be there so that when you have somebody leaving, if you're that tight in your work duties now that you are going to incur all this additional overtime because you have one person missing, should we just be adding another person to the org chart, which we could look at doing at budget time?
And we added the captain position this year, right?
We added several positions.
Yeah, I think the captain's one. Does that help answer your question? So being that we're in the budget process, we're aware of what you said, so I appreciate that. Very good thoughts. Other questions or comments? Pamela, anything out there? I don't want to miss you.
Well, can we consider next year? Just discuss 2024 today?
So are you saying, if I get this right, forget about this, scratch it completely, and just consider this in the next budget cycle? Is that what she's saying? Anyone here?
I think she wants to.
I'm saying
this
approve
overhire.
the 2024 and then discuss the 2025 next year.
Oh, okay, so forget
And
the
maybe talk about it with the budget.
Gotcha. So scratch out the subsequent part of this and then go with the request for the overhire based on the recommendation. Correct?
Correct. And then possibly talk about it when you discuss the budget as a permanent thing then.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Thank you.
And I was going to kind of say the same thing. So first of all, I really think this should go to council and have the full body look at this and give us more time to digest it. We have all this information. They can reach out, to anybody to get more information. I'm talking the other alders or yourselves. So I'd make a recommendation, a motion rather, to allow the overhire for the police officer for 2024. I'm not putting in subsequent years in my motion.
I'll second.
All right, motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Again, this will be for discussion moving forward for the council, which I think it deserves. Based on the motion and second, any comments or additional discussion? Alderperson Quigley.
Yeah, and this kind of follows with what Alderperson Kundiger was saying. Is there a way for us to project the impact on overtime? Because every month for both police and fire, we're doing the overtime reports. If we could see that being fully staffed or technically overstaffed, if it would allow for some decrease in the number of overtime hours, that would be helpful to help understand it and fit it into next year's budget.
Great, and I think the chief heard that as well, so he'd be aware of that. Correct, chief?
Yes, and I guess my difficulty in doing that is the way that our overtime is tracked, it's allocated as a category called staffing overtime. So any time that we have to fill a staffing position because of a vacancy, it goes under that general category. What that category does not capture, though, is if the staffing vacancy is caused by somebody being on family medical leave or somebody being injured and on a light duty status. All it is basically documenting is that there was a vacancy that was filled through overtime. So unless we could specifically come up with an overtime classification for this position was vacant only because we didn't have a staff person hired to fill that spot of the rotation, that would be the only true way of accounting for that.
Good with that?
Okay, yeah, I understand that explanation. Yeah.
Alderperson Gantz, were you saying something?
Sorry, it was Shannon.
Oh, Shannon,
No, thank you.
anything else to add?
I just wanted to point out, too, in a perfect world, we would be able to have a position that we could, if we did this over hire, we could take that person and move their shifts around for where we had a need. Unfortunately, hours of work is something that needs to be negotiated into a labor contract. And we haven't tried it before, but I have to believe it'd be very challenging for the union would allow us to create a new position that you could essentially say, from week to week, we don't know what your shift schedule is going to be. We're going to, one day you're going to be on this schedule, the next week you're going to go on nights, and you're moving the afternoons. If we had the ability to do that and we could kind of plug people in where there's a need, that'd be fantastic. Now, we haven't gone through that process before. It doesn't mean we can't, but I just don't want there to be thoughts of, okay, we're spending, X amount in an extra position, so that means we could automatically then reduce the overtime budget by X. Certainly it will reduce, but exactly how much, it's, as to what the chief was saying, he brought up some difficulties in getting an exact figure, and then that even compounds the issue of trying to get exact amount. But to your point, Alderperson Quigley, it's certainly a valid question, and we could probably try to do our best. I know it's been looked at before, and I don't know how close the chief feels like we came to that number, but I think it's, if we had that, I'm sure that would be in the memo, but it's just challenging to kind of know it. But certainly the overtime would be decreased.
Okay.
Larry?
Yeah, I mean, from my experience in the places I've been in, even here in the past when we've looked at things with staffing, it's unlikely you're going to see a significant decrease in overtime by adding the overhire. It just doesn't work that way. People call in sick, people are on vacation, people have the FMLA, whatever it is, that happens. And again, there's no way you can just have the person as a free floater saying, come in today, don't come in tomorrow, come in the next evening, don't come in the next afternoon when people are gone. It just doesn't work that way. And so there would be, like Shannon said, there would be most likely a minor decrease in the overtime overall. But really, if you're doing this, you're doing it to fill the positions for the workload, not to decrease overtime, because you really won't see much of a decrease in overtime cost. You just won't from this.
Good.
Yes.
Any additional questions or comments? I think everyone's shared as far as Shannon, Pam, and everyone else, and the chief. All right, that said, All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. This will go to council chief. I'm going to move 9 ahead of 8 because they're kind of like close to each other. So item 9, consideration and request to allow overhire for one firefighter for 2024. Appears the chiefs were talking together here or something, or, yeah?
Yep, so
It's just happenstance?
the situation is very similar. Probably the biggest difference is the onboarding time. We don't experience that same lengthy onboarding time that the police department does, but you'll see on the report, we talk about an average age of our firefighters are 43. We've got a third of the department 50 or over. So we are entering that transition time. So our organization, police was a little bit ahead of us. They turned over, had a lot of retirees. They turned over a lot of their department. We're right on the cusp of that. We're averaging three a year is what we have been averaging. I asked last year for an overhire, for which you did approve. That overhire didn't last long. Within a couple of weeks, we had our vacancy. So it had, so we're really in a situation for the next couple of years for us. I understand the not the ongoing thing. I did bring up our staffing issue at budget time last year, and additional people did not get approved. But where we really experience our stress in the organization is over that summertime. That's when our staff takes their vacation, and that's when we're running typically at very minimum levels. So to be able to have somebody in place for July 1st, that really dramatically bolsters our operation through the course of the summer. I did try to break it down, working 24-hour shifts. It's a little bit easier to zero in on what that overtime is. So we just kind of worked out an average, and on each shift, what's the average amount of overtime hours. So you'll see that in the report. So you see kind of what the impact is in terms of the overtime reduction in adding this person. We have several people, as you're aware, the contract is a couple years away. A couple years out of date. We've got a couple people hanging in there for that contract to be settled. So once that happens, we're moving into arbitration at this point. So once that happens, I'm experiencing to see several vacancies. So the overhire, I do not believe it will last very long.
And I think the number here, so we're all aware, I think 29,000 is what I see
Correct.
for the remainder of the year, if by July 1st.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Shannon, do you want to jump in on this one? I guess we went Pam first, but I think that's...
I don't really have anything additional to add. I would agree with the chief. The onboarding process is quite different for fire. Certainly, we experience, a number of overtime within the fire department like we do for police. Now, theirs will be decreased slightly, but when I have to compare the two, I certainly be more in favor of subsequent vacancies for police. I think fire, this will set us up much better for at least the summer going into it. I don't know that we need to do subsequent vacancies for the fire department. Fire department, we have two kind of eligible lists of candidates that we can pull from, and their process for getting them hired and ready to go is a lot shorter than we have for police. But certainly it would help with summer vacancies. And we know right now we have an employee that's going to be on family medical leave starting in May through like the end of August. So, and we anticipate we may be having a vacancy, as the chief mentioned, in addition to some people that are leaving when the contract is settled, but there may be an additional person that we're speculating may be leaving at some time soon.
I'm not sure you said it, but I'm assuming like the paid on premise we have would be some of the candidates that would be a possible fill.
Yes, yep, and that does contribute. As Shannon indicated, our onboarding goes a little bit faster. If we can find someone within our paid on premise model to move up to our full-time, our onboarding goes really quick because they're already employees. They're really plug and play. They just move up to that 24-hour schedule. So that's work to really reduce our onboarding time. And to answer your question, yes, we look to that. Shannon mentioned two pools. We're part of the Fox Valley hiring process as a pool for candidates, as well as our paid on premise pool. Those are the two pools we draw upon.
Okay, and again, we did this last year as well too, so. Questions or comments from anybody? Alderperson Gantz, do you have anything out there?
I do, yep. So this is a one-time, one position, permanent, full-time going forward, correct? It won't end at the end of the year, and then we have to re-vote on it next year. Is that correct?
Chief?
I too was asking for this to go on for subsequent years while we experience this turnover of the top third of our organization, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I understand the reluctance to do that. So as Shannon indicated, maybe it's not as needed for the long term as we turn over the top third of our department, but it really is indicated over the summer season coming.
And we could potentially retain some real quality folks that we have in-house, correct?
Correct.
That's a good benefit to have.
That's a good benefit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alderperson Gantz, is that
Okay,
answer?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I think this is worthy for a council discussion as well. So I would make a motion for the request to allow overhire for one firefighter for 2024 based on the terms laid out.
I'll second.
All right, motion by me, seconded by
One
Alderperson.
second.
Get moving.
Seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Got that one.
Sorry. I
Well
have to
done.
get it in there early. Sorry.
Oh, awesome. Additional questions and/or comments? That said, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for that. Thank you, other Chief, for that as well. Let's go back to item 8, so you may have to stay there. Item 8, consideration and possible action on request to purchase station alerting system for the fire department.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Alderperson Quigley, seconded by Alderperson Pirog. Any discussion or comments regarding the $66,000 that is being requested by the chief? Chief, maybe you want to just kind of highlight some of this.
Sure. So it's been a bit of a long and winding road. The short version is the technology that we use. It's a audible radio signal that gets sent over. I'm in my 39th year. We're using the same system as when we started 39 years ago. Doesn't make it bad just because it's old, right? But it is really starting to age out, and it's the technology and the reliability is really poor. So we have been trying to transition to a much more reliable system over the last several years. So we've been doing the things that we could do in small, tiny bites. For example, if you go around our station, all of you have been there. We've got TV monitors in all the rooms out in the apparatus room bay. That was a grassroots effort. We've installed all that stuff, got it all ready to go. The one piece we're missing is the software to run it. When we say to run those TV screens, situational awareness tells us everything that's happening within the city, where all the calls are. More importantly, that signal, instead of being broadcast over the airways, is broadcast over fiber through computer lines. And when we first started on this venture, there were multiple different vendors and, of course, multiple different price points, from the most expensive, highly secure, to the cheapest. When we approached all of you in 2022, the vendor we were looking at was much more cost effective. The money that was budgeted was $29,000, which would have been enough to get the software for 2 stations. However, that vendor ran into a bunch of trouble, thank goodness, before we purchased, and their product did not sustain very well. In the meantime, we tried to reach out to all the departments in the county, try to see if we could all work together, because it's not only a problem that we have, but all other organizations are going to have. But the reality of it is there are only 4 departments that have full-time fire departments in the county. The 16 fire departments, most all of them are coming from home. So they need to use that radio airway or a cell phone to alert all their members. In terms of who has in-house firefighters, it's Green Bay, De Pere, Schwaben, and Howard currently. So that left the 4 of us seeing if we could try to work towards a better purchase package and agree on type of what the vendor would be or what the product would be. At the end of the day, Green Bay passed their budget amendment last year for this product, so they ultimately declared a vendor and they ultimately started down the path. So they've got, I believe it's over $1 million budgeted. It's going to do their 9 stations, plus there's a $100,000 piece of equipment that has to go in the Brown County Communication Center that they're paying for. Unfortunately, once they made that decision, now if we go to a different vendor, then we have to deal with this connective link at the Brown County Communication Center. The reason why we really stalled the purchase in 2022 is the idea is if we can get more of us together and share the burden of that cost, it just seemed to be more fiscally responsible to all the communities that we serve. So unfortunately, now that they picked a direction, there is also, so now they have a vendor. The vendor they've picked is G2. G2 is a probably one of the finest products they've got. It's highly secured. So instead of just running through an internet line, it actually runs through a secured fiber. Again, the city paid for the infrastructure years ago to have those connections with the county at both of our stations. So all that infrastructure is in place. Again, we've got all the hardware in place. So now what the software would do is it ultimately alerts just each station that's needed. So it's a huge staff satisfier. In other words, if the ambulance on the west side's needed, then just that station gets alerted. If the east side, then just the east side, obviously. So the idea is it improves dramatically employee satisfaction as well as health and safety. More importantly, the resiliency of the program. If a tornado comes through, if a tower goes down, if a power outage happens at any one of the towers, we lose our ability to communicate. And this happens. So that's one of those fragilities built into the system. And this would really secure that. So that's not the case.
So a big benefit is the connection with all the departments.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had it
With-
budgeted for
with Brown
29
County, with our communication.
With Brown County
Yep,
communication
so when
system.
someone calls 911 into Pere, that signal's gonna get back to us and it's gonna alert us. There's some really benefits in that it happens really quickly. Right now, current process is, one of the dispatchers will take the call, they'll answer your call, they have to type in all the information you're getting. When they get enough information to know where they're going and what the problem is, they push send to a dispatcher on the other side of the room. That dispatcher then gets on the radio and ultimately alerts us. That process takes time. With this built in, this $100,000 piece that the city of Green Bay is paying for, the minute the dispatcher starts typing the address, it already zeroes in on where it's going. And as she's typing it, there's an automated voice like Siri that's now communicating that with us. That's going to shorten our dispatch time dramatically by minutes on every call. So to the citizenry, that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. Larry?
Yeah, and again, when the chief came to me and we talked about this because of the need for a budget amendment on it, it made sense to do it now because of the timing. It was approved in the past. With Green Bay doing what they've done, we felt it really was prudent to do it as soon as we could rather than waiting and trying to put it into the 2025 budget with an additional funding request. So that's why it's coming before you now.
Very good, thank you. Chief, anything else? Pam?
My recommendation would be instead of using unassigned reserves, we haven't done our 2024 borrowing yet. I would recommend that we just add the additional to our 2024 borrowing if that suits Larry. I didn't even talk to him about it.
I don't know. I'm not sure because it's a software subscription, if you can put it in with the bonding.
You borrowed for it the first time in '22, so
I know,
that's
but
where
I'm
the
just
funds
saying that
came
might
from.
be an
But
issue.
we just got to work the bonding so you're not paying for debt past the useful life of the software,
Yep.
right? So you got to figure out, is it going to last 3-5 years? Don't.
Chief, you want to get involved in this little discussion here?
Otherwise, I'll look at it.
You're sensing things are going well, aren't you?
I'll look at it this way. See, when I'm done at the end of the year, I'm done. So however Pam wants to do it as the finance director, hey.
Well, that's how I'll kind of do the motion, I assume. I mean, it's either unassigned reserves or it's borrowing, so which,
I prefer borrowing, but it's up to you guys. Either both work, right?
But the only comment is, I think I would approve.
if it works, I'm okay with
Yeah,
borrowing.
I was gonna
Just do
say-
the double check on that.
If you want to do it for borrowing, make the motion that way, but if it doesn't work through with some reason with bond counsel or whatever.
Yes.
then we
That's
would
true.
Go back to unassigned reserves.
Great.
Does that work?
Are we okay then?
I'm good with that, yeah.
Everyone good with that? Any questions while either of them are there? Alderperson Gantz, anything?
I just want to say I agree with this system. I have been on the other end where it has taken a few minutes for the process to happen, and I think it's really important. I mean, 5 minutes can make a big difference. So, thank you.
Thank you. Then I'd make the motion, again, this is important to move on as well, to approve the request, where am I here, to purchase station alerting system for the fire department using borrowing as a mechanism versus the undesignated unassigned reserves. So borrowing as a mechanism. And if it doesn't work, go in the other direction. Somehow put that in there. You okay with that? That's the motion. I need a second.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson P-Rock. Any additional discussion and/or comments? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Item 10, consideration and possible action on affiliation agreement between the City of De Pere and Colorado State University for supervised clinical experiences. Crystal, you're here, so come on up, Crystal, so they can hear your lovely voice and then make a determination whether they like it or not. Do you want to just give a brief overview? There's not much in here, but anything you
Sure.
can shed in?
Sure. So this opportunity was presented to me when I started, and I thought it was a great opportunity. This, as you saw in the memo, this rotation, the student is actually the Calumet County health officer going for his master's degree. So what a great opportunity for him, for Calumet County, bringing back any projects, and then of course for the city of De Pere, there's benefit, right? So so I just think it's a great opportunity. The length of the agreement will be determined how quickly he can get his hours in. Again, he works a full-time job, so he's going to have to work his schedule to our open hours. But we're really excited about the opportunity to host him here at the city of De Pere.
And I'm looking here, what's the cost?
There's no cost.
No cost.
No cost.
Seriously.
Done.
Wow. That's what Chief Matsky should have said. Questions, comments, or motion? So Pam, you have nothing to add to this, do you?
Good.
I'm actually good with this. I'd make a motion to approve. Thank you for the explanation.
I'll second.
Motion
I'll
by me-
second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Any additional comments or discussion? Next time I will. Yes, you are correct. All right, seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and it goes to council as well, I believe, correct? Thank you, Crystal. All right. Item 11, consideration and possible action for a proposed purchase sale agreement terms with AmeriLux Holdings LLC for approximately, and I'm changing this, on the agenda it says 250,000 square feet, but that's not accurate. It's 500,000 square foot trucking and transportation terminal facility located at 2000 Commerce Drive, parcel ED 3103, ED 304, and portion of ED 3105. So I've changed it to 500,000 square feet, and that's how it's got to be. So Dan, you're on.
It says approximately.
Approximately.
Because we'll go through that. Excuse me. So the item in front of you tonight is, excuse me, one of the items that we've been working with the representative party for quite a while now. When you deal with large projects like this, it tends to take a little bit of time to work through finances, and the projects evolve over time. So that's the reason actually why you see the 250,000. Through the diligence of the applicant, the project has ballooned, I guess you would say, over time, and into probably the maximum available space on the site that we'll talk about here today. So on the screen, you'll see a couple images as we go through this, but you'll also see some numbers and some text. I'll try to get through it all. This is one of those financing requests that come in with the sale of a project. It's a little different than most of our business park properties because this is also a income generating project itself. When we're in our business park, is typically the building itself is part of the operation versus part of the income generation. And so this one took a little bit more time to go through, similar to when we do anything that is an income generating project. So I'll walk through that here as we go.
Is Kurt hiding?
Well, Kurt is actually in one blind spot. He was the worst spot.
You guys can
entire
come sit at the
location,
table if you
so-
want. They're going to ask questions, I'm sure.
Sorry.
See what you were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed that. I was like, where did Kurt go? Yeah, have a seat. Dan, go ahead.
Yep. So on the screen in front of you is the rough approximate boundary of the site we're talking about. Not exactly the most square site when it comes to a business park property. When we first looked at this business park and we created the parcels that you see, that parcel was created, but it was originally intended to be two parcels because there is a stormwater easement running right down the middle of it. We were fortunate enough to have existing De Pere business want to take the entire thing and has been working through with their consultants to find a solution that can potentially work for everybody. So that's what we'll talk about here tonight. So what you see in front of you is about a 20-acre site. It is actually the combination of, as you read the three different parcels out there, a large 18-acre site that you see here, about a just under 2-acre site, I believe, and then there's also is a potential change to this stormwater pond boundary to actually take some of the property out of an outlot and attach it to the business park property with protections that afford us access rights to maintain the pond and a variety of other things. So the site has been pretty much maximized, and we'll go through that here. So On the screen in front of you is about 495,000 square feet of trucking and transportation terminal facility, as well as a portion of that one to be manufacturing, about 10% of it being about manufacturing. Approximate, but that can go over time as it changes. With a lot of these larger buildings, they're flexible. And so the reason why I split into two is, as I mentioned, there is a stormwater line that runs right down the middle of this one to connect Commerce Drive to the pond that is needed to service the stormwater inside of the entire business park. And that stormwater line is the collection point for what you see, this drainage basin, the future YMCA site, our future site as well, and others that are coming down to this past from this point on. So there's a reason why that's important to stay. We did discuss the possibility of moving it, but because it is such a shallow pipe, meaning it doesn't have a lot of fall, it is a farm field. It dealt with a lot of, it would have been very costly to move. And so at this point, they found a way to make it work with two separate buildings. Just some example renderings. Again, they've proposed high quality materials that we like to see in our business park. Those or I should say the precast concrete and a variety of architectural details that add to the context of the building. I think we're also fortunate enough that instead of having one larger building, having multiple buildings also does break up that large facade if it was one large building. So it does help in that aspect as well. So you see those in your packet, and they can comment on any of those example renderings. And what you're seeing here would be the look from Profit Place, so roughly this area over here, looking at this entry point. So as we go through it, the applicant, as I mentioned, worked through quite a few iterations, and we found what we think is a workable solution for all parties involved. And the reason why I say that is because when the city created TID number 17, it was created for a purpose. It was to help grow the business park, but it was also created to help fund our South Bridge Connector project, as well as build Commerce Drive. TID number 10 has seen its struggles. As the Southern Bridge project kept getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out, we ran out of life inside of TID 10 to be able to make some of these projects happen, so we created TID 17 as an overlay to make this happen. So that was the intent behind TID 17. And you've also heard me talk about our mill rate struggles that we continue to have with our business parks, and we've had some of those struggles with not having as much increment coming back because our mill rate continues to drop. It's a positive for the community. Business parks, it's a challenge to provide funding assistance. So I just, it took a few iterations to get through all those hurdles. So in short, what you're looking at here is about a $35 million building. Just under $40 million worth of anticipated construction costs. Again, that can change over time, but the anticipated value is based off of the rent pro forma, and then we did share that with Accurate to give us a fairly good understanding. And actually, they provided the understanding, and Accurate concurred with their findings. And so we're anticipating about a $35 million assessed value on that building. Construction years, if this moves forward, would be between 24 and 25. Valuation date would be then January 1, 2026. We're looking at first full revenue year would be in 2027, with a partial assessment in 2026 as that first half, I guess you'd say half portion of that one comes online. We have to start with the projected mill rate, so we took this mill rate and we backed it off and decreasing 5% annually, but then we also had to add in other hurdles, which were now the school district referendums. And so we started to add those hurdles in there to kind of put out some projections. And so we took the school district referendum. We are, for our intents and purposes, looking at the fall school district referendum as well that potentially could be coming, and put that into our model and stopped at that point. And the reason why we did that is we have to make some assumptions moving forward, and that's a assumption that we wanted to encapsulate in this proposal. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can protect ourselves from some of those things. But we're looking at about a $535,000 annual increment revenue created from this project, and that's based off of the current mill rate with it decreasing annually. That's the initial stabilized value. So we'll talk a little bit about what they're willing to guarantee in the coming slides here, but the initial stabilized based off of its pro forma is about $535,000. We're looking at expected revenue over the whole project is about $10 million worth of revenue over the remaining life of TID number 17. As I mentioned, 22 acres site on there approximately. So they had proposed a purchase price of about $500,000. When we take our business park properties on the east side, we value them at $30,000 an acre. That is below market. If you look at some of our private purchase properties, they're a little higher than that one. Some of them very higher than that one. That's the reason why they're still vacant. But we're looking at about $30,000. Now this is an awkwardly shaped parcel, but two of the parcels we are combining. There are in essence 3 buildable lots here. Plus we're taking some off of that. You have one off-profit place which is being combined, and then the 18-acre parcel would have been split into 2. So relatively, we're looking at about a $675,000 value. They're requesting a purchase price of $500,000 and a site assembly grant of $175,000. That's the difference between our asking price and the sale price. They're also asking for requested project grants of about $6.5 million. I put that into the memo. We weren't able to support that, plus Southern Bridge, plus Commerce Drive, and all the things to help make that business park. And so we worked with a couple different variations to how can we structure an agreement to come relatively close to that target and still meet certain items. We found additional funding sources for South Bridge Connector Project. We tried to fund more of segment 3 with TID number 11 because it is an overlapping across the river, the bridge section. So we're trying to fund more with that one so we can get as much debt coverage on as many of these TIDs and not put as much on the 17 as possible. TIDs 11 and 12 have more debt capabilities than our East Side's TIDs do because they are more successful. So we're trying to, where we can, cover as much of South Bridge in the with TIDs that have that surplus increment. So we're looking at a approximate also change to Profit Place. It will require vacation and removal of some of what we constructed several years ago to pull back some of it so that they do get some of that buildability back. And that also will put more property onto actually what would be One Source Technology. So you met with them about a year and a half ago for their project on Profit Place. Half of that road right-of-way would go to them, half of it would go to AmeriLux here. So overall, at this request, you're at about 19.1% of the value. A little bit higher than what we are, but the site is maximized. But again, we weren't able to make it at the 6.5. So we proposed a couple different things here. You actually see 2 different numbers. One in our proposed scenario and the one in the actual terms is a little bit different because we're working with Accurate to find a way, and our borrowing consultant to find a way to make some of this work. So we're still looking at the site assembly grant of $175,000, and then we're looking at the project grant down to $6.2 million, broken up into 2 separate years. And the reason why that is to help us spread out some of those initial costs before we start receiving some of that revenue. We're going to capitalize what we can, capitalize the interest beforehand, but we won't be able to do that large of an amount to take on that. So they've expressed a willingness to push out one of those cash grant requests the entire year after their project is open, more or less. So actually, it would be another year after that project is open because they're looking at the first one in 2025 at a 50% completion, and then in 2026, they'll actually be on 50% completion. They'll actually be in almost completed at that point. But it's typically where we do this milestone cash grant debt, and then a year after full site completion. So there'll be a full year after they're fully complete and built in before that second grant kicks in. So that's it's a little bit different from how we normally do it, but because of the large requests, that's the reason why we had to push that out. That comes down to about an 18.2% of our increment. A couple of percentage points higher than our recent ones, but again, we are maximizing the site. Our other recent ones that we've done are in the 15s, but those were on sites that do have future buildability into them. This one here, there isn't future buildability. It's done, it's built, and it's there. So we won't see any more requests come back for any of this one, where some of those others may. So with that, you see that they're also proposing a minimum annual revenue of $600,000, and that puts us at about 9.6 total million in increment. The reason why I was showing 10 million or 10.8 million is because I'm looking at also where do we think we're going with our property appreciation rates, meaning our business park properties are going to relatively grow over time. It'll fluctuate up and down, but when you take a look at where some of these have been over the past few years, looking at a 3% property appreciation rate in our business park, it's actually right around that mark where we've been. Some of our west side's a little bit higher because it has highway access, it has other things, and so some of them have a little bit higher appreciation. But as soon as Southern Bridge comes here, we know that this area will have that as much target and flow as the west side does. So they are proposing about $9.6 million worth of guaranteed revenue as part of this one, but with the increment that we're anticipating from the mill rate projections as well as from the property appreciations, we do anticipate that we will have additional coverage. They're just not the guaranteed amount for them is sitting at $600,000 annually. I think we'll have enough coverage to cover everything that we need to do, and we're still working with Brown County to secure as much additional funding for the South Bridge outside of our funding sources and more state and federal grants as we can. So that's where we're at with that one. So then, as I mentioned, we also then look at a market analysis because it is a income generating project versus just a project for themselves to do their own manufacturing in. So a couple of the things that we also then took a look at is how does this fare to our other recently approved projects? You see on a value per acre standpoint, this is one of the highest value per acres that we would have in our business park. Again, it's maximized and built out, where some of our other most recent ones had a little bit of buffer space for some small expansions. So at this point, we're going to be maxed out at about $1.5 million per acre when you do that, when you do the math out. It's a little bit and change. But then you also take a look at recent Bellmark Plant 7. It's another one of our higher ones. You took a look at Bellmark Plant 8 and Plant 2. That's where they combine the two parcels. You can see where some of those are. And some of the other more recent ones, Wash World, 900,000, and then Walter and Smet are a little bit lower on that one. But again, those were awkwardly shaped parcels as well, but they weren't adding as much value. And they also had some growth potentials and growth triggers built into their development agreements. So with that one, we're projected to leave the TID, I believe, with about 1 to 2 million. The entire TID, not just this project, but the entire TID 17 is relatively to have a surplus. Again, it's a little bit of crystal ball here at this point, but we're proposing to have as much coverage as we can. The hard part is with the YMCA coming in, that takes away buildable space for assessed value, so we're trying to get coverage where we can. But again, we're trying to take as much from other projects to help this one move forward as well. So then the market rate of return, we want to make sure that the request does meet the but-for test of without this project wouldn't happen. And so you see my second set of numbers there. If they were to move forward to reach their hurdle of what they would have to do if they funded this all on their own, no investor typically would take this on from a stabilized year return on equity, a return on cost, or an internal rate of return. And that's what we're seeing across the board with almost anything that is income generating, because the cost of construction and interest rates have outpaced, I guess you'd say, the assessed values and the appreciated values of those projects. And that's just sort of the nature of what we've seen. So by that, they do meet the but-for test. So when we add the development incentive into that one, you can see that they are in the middle or lower ranges of those market expected rate of returns. And so I do feel that while the request is high, if you look at the request per assessed value, it's in line with where we've been with other projects. It's just a large project. So with that, you saw all the proposed terms in the packet. I can go through them individually if you like, but several of them are, I guess you would say, are standard. But it's ready to go for any discussion, and the applicants are here.
As I always say when Dan talks, wow. Did you catch all that? There's going to be a quiz later on. AmeriLux is here. Did you guys have stuff you want to add based on what was stated? If so, I'm going to have to open the meeting up. Do you want to talk?
I think Dan's done a great job explaining the project. If you have any, turn it off. I think Dan's done a great job explaining the project. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Anyone have any questions for them? Any need to open as far as you can tell? Alderperson Gantz, any questions of AmeriLux?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I do like how you did the comparables with the others to see how, it's just not exactly the same. I like the but-for thing as well, too. I don't recall that. That's pretty impressive. Larry, anything to add on this?
Just curious, wouldn't Bellmarks under their newly assessed value that the state gave them be a much better per acre?
I'm not including what we believe is a misassessment by the state, we'll say. And actually, to be honest, I actually think this one is still higher based off of that one. It's closer, but it's still higher. So
It's a very impressive project. I mean, it really is. And again, this is one of the things where we really have to move this on so the council gets their full eyes on this. Obviously, it goes to plan commission if we approve this going forward as far as the building and
No.
nothing else. This is
no,
the
because
finish.
if you remember, our site plan.
Oh, we did that,
un-
yeah.
Unless they're asking for anything above and beyond the zoning code, we've added stipulations into the zoning code that says we want X, Y, Z in our business park. And as long as they're willing to do X, Y, Z and do what the plan commission
good.
asked, we're ready to go. And that's again for us to be development ready, because we only meet once a month. And if we delay a project in Wisconsin by a month, that can do a lot of damage.
That's great. And we worked on it. We talked about that too, so.
And so I will say the Plan Commission did last year actually add trucking and transportation terminal facility to our zoning code in anticipation of a project like this, and added buffering requirements and stuff like that. And they've been made aware of those, and their designer is working through those items. So, yep. So the Plan Commission has met and discussed this topic before.
Larry?
On a more serious note, I do think it's a great project. I know that you guys have gone through endless iterations with Dan back and forth to make everything work, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the park and for the community.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think that echoes everything we think as well too, and that's well stated.
I want to give Dan some credit, too. He's done a great job of educating us how these things work. So
Thank you.
he's a good man.
Well, Pam, move over a little bit so the head. I would make a motion to approve the, I'm trying to get the
I have
proper.
one question for Dan. We didn't open the floor, but if I could ask a question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
The scale and scope of this project is huge, just phenomenal. You've thought through many of the details. My question is more about the surrounding infrastructure as we take on more growth in the area as the bridge continues. And with Pam sitting right next to you, the implications and the planning that have to go into, especially with projects like the Y, with traffic infrastructure, street infrastructure. I know that that's outside of this, but how is that being planned forward as well?
Well, I'll actually say it's not outside of this. And the reason why is, when you have two things, non-transportation infrastructure, but stormwater and wastewater and water utility infrastructure, this project won't have a very large impact to that one. So it actually preserves a lot of our capacity as we go further south. As we add more manufacturing and more of those uses, you're going to start seeing more of those things be taken up. So if this was a manufacturer that was a heavy water user, that would be using a lot of our capacity and a lot of our sewer capacity in our interceptors moving north, and it would have a harder time when it comes to further south. So I think we're okay there. As it relates to Southern Bridge, well, Larry knows I've been looking at Southern Bridge spreadsheets for the better part of since I started here. But we've actually been working with the county on infrastructure and transportation planning for Southern Bridge in anticipation of the Commerce Drive being our vital corridor to the business park. And that may come with some trade-offs into our other parts of our business park that touch Rockland Road, because not every street that we have that currently touches Rockland Road will connect to South Bridge Connector in a direct fashion, or we'd be having roundabouts every couple hundred feet. We just can't do that. So, but anticipation of this one, we actually dedicated the appropriate right-of-way for a roundabout at this location for this purpose, knowing the fact that this was our growth area with Bellmark, with now AmeriLux and others being in that area. So,
Thank you.
and then also South Bridge, Larry and others and DPW staff have been very vocal about the need for multimodal opportunities along the South Bridge Connector project, so that when we have heavy vehicles, truck traffic and stuff like that, they are separated from the multimodal traffic as well. So we are working through all those things on parallel paths.
Larry, you want to just share that quickly what you just said?
Oh, I just mentioned to the mayor. We are also, like, for example, with utilities, we've given our plans for the water authority and our own water department. New water, we've been in discussions with on getting an additional interceptor extended down into the south as well. That's going to be an issue for us, has been for an ongoing decades on how that'll get done. So I do think everything will get developed. It'll take time. Luckily, everything happens somewhat incrementally. And then as you're seeing the corridor continue to be built, you'll see development occurring on the corridor incrementally. And once the corridor goes through, then you'll see a bit of an explosion probably to the south. But hopefully everything will be in place at that point to address it.
All good? Answer your question?
I'll even second your motion.
Okay, yeah, so the motion is, if you put it in there, pretty much what it says there. So I make a motion to approve the purchase sale agreement terms with AmeriLux, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're going to second it. Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Conacher. Any additional discussion and/or comments? Alderperson Gantz, are you okay with the motion?
Yep, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? That said, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And this goes to council, correct?
Yep, city attorney will be drafting the development agreement with the parties involved, and then it'll go to council.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in. Very exciting. Thanks, you guys. Very exciting. Item 12, consideration and possible action on the City of De Pere investment and cash detail reports for February of 2024. I'll make a motion to accept and place on file.
Second.
Motion by me, second by Alderperson P-Rock. Questions, comments for Pam while she's waiting right there?
Nope.
Looks like there are none. That said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 13, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Item 14, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Conacher. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.